Hello, 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 hello. So it is Sleep Awareness Week. And in honor of Sleep Awareness Week, I am sharing some tips, some midlife power shift tips, so that you and I can make rest a power move that we are engaging in midlife. So today we're talking about sleep, rest, and leadership in perimenopause and midlife. My name is Dr. Fiona. So let's go ahead and get started. I have a few questions for you. So, are you waking up exhausted after having about 7 to 8 hours of sleep? Could it be that you don't need more sleep, but perhaps you need to rest? And so we're going to get into the difference between sleep and rest in a minute. How many of you midlife professional women feel like you're doing everything? You're doing everything right. You're leading, you're showing up, you're managing your life. You feel like you're managing your life well, but you still feel drained, stuck, and like you're losing your competitive edge. And then I wanted to ask you, did you know that sleep alone may not be the fix for your exhaustion, especially if you're in perimenopause and in midlife? So let's talk a little bit more about this. So we want to show up well, we want to lead well, we want to love well, we want to do all those things well. And it may be that we are not getting the enough rest and the types of rest that we need to have. So let's get into it. So by the end of this session, this talk that I'm sharing with you, you will know why sleep isn't the only form of rest you need, the 7 types of rest, and how they can impact your leadership and perimenopause, how to reclaim rest as a power move. So we talk a lot about in leadership, in industry, in our careers, power, but sometimes, a lot of times, power lies in resting, being still, restoring ourselves, right? So resting is a power move, and I want to encourage you to consider rest as a power move, engage you around the perspective, the thought process that rest is actually a power move. And then I created something super special that I'd love to share with you towards the end of my talk. It's called Baddies Over 40 Unite. It's actually a project that I created specifically for midlife professional women to help us to think about and prioritize our well-being, and think about ways that we can, for instance, rest, right? And be held accountable for that in a safe community. So let's get going. A little bit more about me. I am the founder of a startup, a femtech startup called Black and Perry. And I have 17 plus years of integrative nutrition and wellness experience. And with all of the things that I do, as you see on the screen, I am on a personal professional mission to make sure that midlife and menopause transition, also known as perimenopause, is one of the most celebratory and transformative experiences of a woman's life. So let's get into it. Let's talk about sleep, but more so rest. So this is your reminder, this is your introduction, this is your engagement, call to engage with me around the power shift called rest. So let's talk a little bit about sleep and rest. What's the difference? So sleep is a form of rest. If you did not know, if you know, then it's a reminder. So sleep is a form of rest, but it's not enough. Rest is multidimensional. And so for the rest of my talk with you, the rest of my sharing, tips and strategies, we're going to be talking about the different aspects of rest and why we need to lean into them, how they may show up in midlife and perimenopause, and how they may impact our leadership and the effectiveness of our leadership. So there's 7 types of rest, as I mentioned before. So let's talk about power shifting with mental rest. So in perimenopause, many of us midlife women who are perimenopausal know that with the changes in our estrogen levels, the decline, there comes, for some women, not all, the brain fog, the forgetfulness, and the feeling of being overwhelmed. On top of that, if we're not well rested mentally, right, there's some mental exhaustion there that adds to the menopause transition experience where we're not rested. And so brain fog, forgetfulness, and feeling overwhelmed is part of not only the hormone shift, but the fact that we're not resting adequately mentally. So, how does that show up in our leadership roles? So, poor decision making and lack of clarity. So, think about the decisions that you've had to make recently. How were those decisions? To think about it in terms of mental rest or exhaustion, whichever side you're on. So, I love to share information, but for me, information without action doesn't empower you. So I'm here to share some strategies, some tips, some reminders of how you can I'll put into action what I've shared with you. So here we are, some actionable tips for resting, mental rest. So you can do like a digital detox or a brain detox where you are taking some quiet time, and you can make that part of your routine. Decide which times of the day you need that, and you're able to do that at work, and when you're at home as well on the weekends. So quiet time, screen free time, no screens. We spend a lot of time in front of the screens, and even pausing to take deep breaths. It could be about a 5-minute brain detox, right? And so the next power shift we're leaning into as it relates to rest is physical rest. And this is, of course, we know commonly as sleep, but there are other forms of physical rest. So let's talk about how the lack of having enough physical rest or the lack of physical rest can affect us during our midlife menopause journey and leadership. So fatigue, joint pain, muscle recovery slowdown. These are all, and there are other symptoms of not having adequate physical rest and how that shows up in our midlife and menopause experience. So think about what's happening in your body. Have a mindful moment, and are you feeling fatigued? Are you feeling drained? Why is that? And then in terms of our leadership, we can't show up fully with a type of energy and have the same productivity that we'd like to have and we're used to having if we are not well rested physically, right? So this is about physical rest. And so in our leadership, we may show up with low energy and not being as productive. So, what are we going to do? We're going to schedule some micro breaks. So, breaks to stretch, to have a power nap, right? To stroll, step away from the laptops, the screens, the project, and just have a nice stroll outdoors to get some fresh air. That can revive us physically, moving our bodies a little bit, getting some of those happy hormones. And then the next power shift I'd love for you to consider in terms of rest is emotional rest. So let's see how that shows up in our perimenopause and midlife experience, as well as our leadership experience. So, in perimenopause, with the shifting of hormones, we already know that mood swings for some women, not all women, mood swings is actually an experience that we may have. And so, and being a bit more sensitive, think about if you're emotionally, you have a lot to unpack and you haven't been able to unpack it, that emotional weight, and maybe someone is asking you a question or you're having a conversation, you're pretty sensitive or defensive or sharp with the person. So not having the opportunity or not taking the time to rest emotionally can definitely contribute to mood swings, increased sensitivity. Also, in terms of our leadership, emotional exhaustion is real. And so, if we are not rested emotionally, then that comes out in our leadership as emotional exhaustion, where our lack of empathy in terms of how we relate to our team members, and then this whole just being really overloaded with stress. And so that will definitely impact the way our judgment, the way that we interact and show up with our teams and even our clients and our bosses. And so, something to consider, an actionable tip to help you rest emotionally is to figure out how you want to create a safe emotional space to release and let go of those things that you need to process, the emotional baggage. So, journaling is one of those things I love to do. I love therapy too. Um, I love to talk to friends, trusted friends, and then other self care routines. So, decide, but be intentional about your emotional rest as you are about other types of rest. And so we get to sensory, we're making power shifts, and this is about shifting your power with sensory rest. And yes, we spend a lot of time in front of screens. We work in front of screens. Our entertainment at times comes from a screen. Our smartphones that, you can do anything on the smartphones. So light, noise, screens, really, that's overstimulation. And so I want to tell you a story. I had a conversation with a colleague of mine, and she was telling me that and we're about the same age, the midlife, mid to late 40s, and she was telling me about her work experience. So at work, she gets a lot of migraines. The lights are too bright. The It's an open space. All the talking is distracting, and so she said it was not this way all the time. This is something new as she's gotten older. And I said to her, you're not, and she was ashamed of it. And I encouraged her to lean into her experience and explore it with her provider, but to also consider asking for accommodations because this is not unique to just her. There are other people, other women, especially I've heard from other women who have talked about the increased sensitivity to light and noise and screens and different things like that. So, sensory, we have to be careful about being overstimulated and sensory overload in terms of the impact on our leadership. It's stressful, it's anxiety causing, it's fatiguing. And those are the things that my friend actually described. She described the anxiety, the fatigue, the stress. related to just feeling really overly stimulated. And so asking for accommodations, and I'll share some of these tips for sensory rest, can really make a difference in the way that we experience our perimenopause, especially at work, and the impact that not having enough sensory rest can have on our leadership. So, take an audit of your environment, your workspace, your office, wherever you're working. And when you're feeling the fatigue, and you're feeling some of the stress, and you're feeling overstimulated, pay attention to your body. But consider taking an audit and noticing where you can, wanting to take some time to have some sensory rest, right? You turn off shut down your computer, or put it on sleep, step away from your desk, make some time to just schedule some quiet time, turn off your notifications. Sometimes I'm working, and in order for me to stay focused, I have to turn off the sound, so I don't hear the email notification. So these are some things. Even sitting in a room for a few minutes with no lights or dim lighting can also help to restore you in terms of your sensory rest. And so, creative rest. This is one of my favorites. I have a creative heart. And so, power shifting. And so, again, what we're talking about is that there is power in resting, and sleep is just one form of rest. So, we've been talking about the different types of rest and why they're important for helping us, why we should lean into them so that we can have the best midlife perimenopause experience, and how not having adequate rest in these areas can show up in our leadership. So, let's look at creative rest. So, midlife is the time when we think and reflect. We reflect on where we have been, all of our experiences. We're wanting to make changes because we realize that we reached the middle of our lives, and we want to make sure that the rest of our lives we get done, we live in a way, not just get done, but we have a state of being, and we live in a way that is going to be inspiring and life giving. So, you may find yourself in midlife, in your perimenopause journey, midlife journey, feeling uninspired and not motivated for several reasons, right? In your leadership, you may not be able to be as creative or innovative, and you're feeling stuck. There are many reasons why these things can happen, but what I do want you to consider is, have you rested creatively? Have you embraced creative rest? Right? So let's look at what embracing creative rest would really look like. So it's doing things that are non-work related. And to be honest with you all, the reason why this is one of my favorites is because a few years ago, and even now from time to time, I have to give myself permission to do that, because I have a full-time job and I'm also an entrepreneur. So at any given time, I can be working on one project, work project, business project, just work, work, work. And so it may be the same for you. You may not be having the entrepreneurship and the full time work, but you just may be a worker, just working all the time, and not giving yourself the permission and the opportunities to replenish and to rest in terms of your creative juices and muscles, right? So, some things that can help: drawing, music, cooking, simply daydreaming, right? So, let's look at something. I wanted to share this with you all. And this is one of the reasons why I created Baddies Over 40 Unite. This project, I'll give you all the details towards the end. But this is an opportunity. If you know that you need to be resting creatively, that you need to put aside the work things, the work activities, and embrace things that are going to stimulate your creative juices, build your creative muscles, help you to re-engage with your creativity, then Baddies Over 40 Unite is for you. So I know in midlife we get to that point we're thinking, what have I done? What have I accomplished? What is on my bucket list? What's on my wish list? How I have dreams. Have I achieved those dreams? So we're thinking, right? We're thinking, and where midlife is a time for reinvention, to go after the dreams, to chase and to embrace the things that we were probably putting off because we were serving, leading, nurturing, and doing all the things that women do, right? So, Baddies Over 40 Unite is an opportunity for you to embrace the creative rest of storytelling. Storytelling is so powerful, it's healing. And so, Baddies Over 40 Unite, that's one of the reasons why I created it, so that you can be part of this project and tell your write your own story, write an empowering story for describing your over 40 experience or your menopause transition experience in a way that is empowering for yourself and empowering for other women who need to hear about your story. So, storytelling is one of those things that you can do to have creative rest. You get to write your story, and then you get to tell your story. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But then you get to tell your story. You get to engage in the discipline or the activity of oration, right? You get to tell your story at my upcoming summit on October 17th. That those two activities are definitely forms of creative rest. And so I'm inviting you, you'll get some more information if you hang tight. And so we're talking about social rest. That's the next type of rest. And so think about a time when you spent a lot of time with a large group of people, or you spend time with people in general, and you walked away feeling drained, right? Um, Energy shifts already happen in our perimenopause midlife experience with the shift and change in our hormones. But then the time that we spend with others when we're giving energy, right? That also can require us to think about engaging in some sort of solitude, right? Or having deeper connections, seeking for deeper connections so that we can rest socially. I was telling a few of my colleagues from the Atlanta Black Chamber, we did a live recently, and I was telling them one of the jobs that I had to spend a lot of time. It was a wellness dietitian job, and I spent a lot of time doing wellness events on college campuses. And some of the schools, in the dining halls, some of the schools had large hundreds of students. So sometimes I would spend in a 2.5 hour block engaging with about 150, 200 students, 200 plus students, depending on what the activity was and how popular it was. And when I left that event, when that event was over, the only thing I could do was sleep, because and just withdraw because I was exhausted, right? So that's that social rest. And so in terms of our leadership, this is big, right? Our leadership can carry heavy social burdens, emotional burdens. So we are going to need to think about those boundaries. Otherwise, we'll always be drained. So let's look a little bit at strategies for social rest. So, two things. We may want to withdraw and limit our interactions if they're draining, but we may also want to find ways to connect with doing activities or connect with people in groups where it's life giving and we feel like we are being energized. So think about what that would look like for you. And the last type of rest we're talking about is spiritual rest. Spiritual rest. So if you're just joining me, my name is Dr. Fiona, as it says, and we're talking about the power move for midlife, perimenopausal, and it doesn't have to be, it could be one or the other, women, professional women, and how rest is actually a power move. Rest is actually a power move where typically we want to, when we think about power, we're not thinking about resting. At least that is the messaging that we get from our popular culture and our media. Like power means you need to be doing something, it needs to be a lot of strength to it. But there is so much power in resting, right? So let's talk about spiritual rest. And it is as you think it is. Again, midlife, that perimenopausal period is when we are thinking deeply about the life that we have lived and the life that we want to move forward living. We're thinking about our purpose. Why are we here? Are we fulfilling? Are we living in and on purpose? Are we doing the things that are fulfilling? Midlife is when that really, really happens, right? And in terms of not having spiritual rest, not having the time to consider and ponder on our purpose and have deep reflection, then in terms of our leadership, um, we may not have the clarity that we need to be impactful in our leadership. So, leaders with clarity who spend the time resting spiritually um, have clarity about purpose and are more impactful, are able to lead their teams in impactful ways. So, spiritual rest is very important for our menopause transition experience, for midlife experience, for our leadership experience. And so these are some actionable steps, right? Again, as I share these things with you, I'm also sharing ways for you to be actionable. Take action, do something. You may know everything that I have shared, but it is now March and you may need a reset. So I'm encouraging you to engage with me as I'm sharing these tips. So, grounding practices, which can include prayer, meditation, volunteering, and spending time in nature. So, what I want to leave you with as we are coming to almost the end is that you don't have to push through. If you feel like you're pushing through midlife, professional, Black women, women in general, if you feel like you're pushing through, consider rest as a power move. So the most powerful leaders are the ones who take the time to rest. They use rest as a strategy. Did you know that rest can be a strategy for your leadership? It is. And so I need you to engage with me in the chat as you're watching this live or on the replay. I need you to tell me which type of rest are you missing the most right now? Tell me in the comments. And if you know a leader, midlife woman, professional woman who needs to hear and listen to what I just shared as a reminder, as an introduction, as a strategy for being more impactful, for flourishing, for being successful, then please also tag them in this live. So let's go on just a little more. So, Baddies Over 40 Unite, I mentioned it. I mentioned to you that I created it for midlife professional women, midlife women who are entrepreneurs, midlife women who need to make some power move, power shifts. So, let's talk a little bit about it. You get to define midlife on your own terms. So, how you've lived up until your midlife point doesn't have to be how you continue to live, right? And oftentimes, as midlife women, we're thinking about reinventing, but sometimes we don't have the bandwidth. Sometimes we don't have the courage, and there are other things that may slow us down or prevent us from making those changes in terms of our health, reinvention of our careers. And so Baddies Over 40 Unite, that's why I created that, this project, so that we can do that together. So Baddies Over 40 Unite, why did I create it? So that as midlife women, we can reclaim our health and our energy. We can rethink our careers and leadership path. We can build a midlife friendly routine. So this is where the wellness coaching comes in from me, and the group wellness accountability. We can create community, right? And support one another and set realistic expectations about our health, our well being, our leadership roles and careers in midlife. So we're doing this together to support and encourage one another. So this is why I created this project, Baddies Over 40 Unite, for midlife professional women, midlife women who are transitioning to menopause, midlife professional women who are entrepreneurs. So let's look at how this is structured. So, what's included in Baddies Over 40 Unite? There is group wellness coaching, so midlife wellness strategies I share with you from a curriculum that I created. Share the strategies. In the group setting, we create a safe space to help you stay accountable, to support you in your wellness goals for the duration of the program. And then we have your opportunity now to engage in creative rest by contributing to a book project, telling your story, storytelling. I shared that before. Speaking at Pericon ATL, right? So that you can share your story on stage and engage in another type of creative rest. And then there is expanding your network. So what between the group that will travel together and work together for Pericon ATL and for the book project. In that space where we're working together collectively, collaboratively, we will build a network. Then at Pericon ATL, you will have the opportunity to meet other like-minded women who are interested in what you have to share and who will be empowered by what you have to share and who will also cheer you on as you are sharing it. And then there's, of course, the sisterhood and the support. So we covered, and this is how you can message me if you're interested in learning more about the project. You can scan the QR code, and I am looking forward to hearing from you. If you have questions, share this information with someone who you know they are looking for a midlife reinvention, health, career, profession, all those things. That's what we will be working on and on for Baddies Over 40 Unite. So it has been my pleasure to remind you, encourage you, engage with you around power moves as it relates to resting, that there is power in resting. Sleep is just one form of rest. And so I encourage you and invite you to think about all the different types of rest and which ones you need to lean into. So I will see you